Hello, and thank you for joining our webinar. Microlearning is a big deal. This webinar is presented by Michael Rochelle, Chief Strategy Officer and Principal Analyst with Brandon Hall Group, and Emily Hayden, Learning and Development Business Partner at EBSCO. Emily Hayden is the Learning and Development Business Partner at EBSCO Information Services, where she is responsible for employee learning initiatives, including leadership development, mentoring, and onboarding. This webinar is sponsored by EBSCO. EBSCO Information Services is a leading provider of research databases, e-journals, e-books, discovery service, and corporate learning tools for libraries, corporations, healthcare organizations, and government institutions. EBSCO Information Services is a division of EBSCO Industries, one of the largest privately held and family-owned companies in the United States. And now a little background on Brandon Hall Group. We are a research and analyst firm that empowers excellence in organizations around the world through our research and tools. Our vision is to inspire a better workplace experience. We have world-class research, data, and expertise across all areas in human capital management. Currently, we have the following open surveys. These spread across all areas of HCM, including talent acquisition, learning, talent management, and many more. We would love to hear from you. If you participate, you could receive free gift cards, research reports, and more. To do so, please visit our website at brandonhall.com and click on Open Surveys. And finally, a few housekeeping items. This presentation is being recorded. The playback and slides will be provided to everyone within 24 hours of the webinar in a follow-up email. If you would like to download a copy of the presentation instantly, you may find it in the handout section. If you would like to ask a question, please do so by typing it into the question box for our presenters. And now, here's Michael so we can get started.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm Michael Rochelle, again, Chief Strategy Officer and Principal HCM Analyst here at Brandon Hall Group. Welcome to, I think, is a very important topic and top of mind for many people around the world, and working through leadership development and how to make it better. I want to kind of jump in on what we've seen in the industry and the information that we've collected, data surveys that we do, interviews we do with top HR professionals. And what you're seeing here is that we'd like to see a greater spend. I mean, about 18% of the learning and development budget is spent on leadership development. It's not a high number. It shows a level of importance, but certainly it needs to grow dramatically in order to be able to make the improvements and break through on that business outcome that we'd like to see from our leaders. And on the right-hand side, we're just kind of framing here how you really need to think about leadership development. And when you go around the dial, understand all the different elements of leadership development, you can see where spending and increase in spending should become fairly significant. And as we continue our discussion on leadership development, we'll get into the next piece, which is what are high-performing organizations doing? So we know that many organizations are struggling with their leadership development, but we believe there's some really great bright spots, and we'll be hearing more from our other speaker, being able to go through that, Emily, more in person and give you a really personalized approach to what's happening there and what they're doing. But I think it's important to talk about what high-performing organizations are doing. And if we go to the next piece, we can dive right in. And that is the nexus of leadership development. And what that really means for us, what we consider is important, is how you develop leaders. And in developing leaders, it can't be a destination-based learning event. You really have to look at that leaders have to be developed in a lifelong continuous learning format, which gives them the opportunity to learn and then be able to demonstrate and practice over and over again what they're learning. So what we like to say here at Brandon Hall Group is that leaders are not trained, they're forged, and they're forged through experience. So we need to give them the proper learning, but then we have to give them the opportunity to practice it, receive feedback, understand whether or not they're moving the needle on new behaviors and resulting performance. And that can only be supported with a lifelong continuous learning strategy, which is perfect for a micro-learning strategy. So as we continue our discussion, we have to really look at is how often do we need to reinforce what's the expectation of leaders and what's the expectation overall of our employees, as they can also be participants in this microlearning environment. But let's focus on what it really takes. And many organizations, when they see this information, probably think about it intuitively and say, yes, I need to be able to give feedback more timely. But when you take a look at what the impact that it has, it's incredibly important. So we can see here that 64% of individuals are looking to connect with learning resources to perform their job on a weekly, daily, or even more often, even on an hourly or minute by minute. And what's key about that is learning has to actually happen while work is happening. And so that's why microlearning is so important, because it allows that stream of bite-sized content and information to happen while people are working, learning in the world of work. And leaders are especially tuned in to being able to learn and do at the same time. And then you can see with high-performing organizations, there's an accentuation around that. There's definitely an exclamation part that high potential organizations nearly double the amount of microlearning they use in developing their people than other organizations that are not high performers. So this clearly shows that the impact on microlearning in terms of that supporting that continuous learning and developing leaders is exceptionally important, not only to the leaders themselves, but really creating monumental and demonstrable changes in business outcomes. And as we continue our discussion to make a finer point on it, here are all the different approaches that organizations are taking to show impact of microlearning. And the two elements that really jump out here are the leadership promotion rates and leadership turnover. So for organizations that are employing microlearning, you can see that this has a significant impact on promotion rates and leadership turnover. Organizations that don't use microlearning actually see not nearly the benefit and actually potentially a negative impact by not using it. So it's not something that's out there that's vague or unable to be measured or create a good ROI story, business case around it. But here you can clearly see across the board that employing microlearning is a great best practice and next practice to have impact across all of these areas, but particularly with leadership.
So we had a quick question here. How are you defining microlearning?
Microlearning it's a great question. Microlearning is defined as steady stream learning. So the idea being using repetition-based learning in intervals in order to create retention. So the idea is to be able to give a steady stream of information, tests, exams, knowledge, in order for a leader to be able to continue to reinforce what they've already learned. So we're trying to make sure that the forgetting curve doesn't take hold of a leader's development, and that the leadership development information and guidance that we're providing through our learning is staying top of mind, it's staying fresh, it's being reinforced so that the depth and retention levels are at their maximum.
Okay, great. And then there's one more about this slide in particular. What does leadership promotion rate reference?
It referenced the number of people that are promoted from within throughout the leadership development process, whether it's high potentials moving into new leadership positions, or whether it's one level of leader moving to another level of leadership. So it's that internal promotion rate that organizations that use microlearning have a much greater impact on their leadership promotion rates. They have a much better promotion rate of their leaders than when they don't. So a couple of great questions, and I'm sure we'll have more. So here we're getting a little bit more granular and basically saying, posing the question to our respondents of basically their belief that your current leaders have the emotional intelligence and competencies to be able to navigate what they need to navigate over the next 12 to 18 months that are in their inbox. And you can see that organizations break out basically 60-40 of yes, no. But what's important is on the next slide is what that means as far as leadership development and microlearning. So you can see that the organizations have answered yes, that they feel that they're firmly positioned for their managers and all levels of leaders to be able to successfully navigate the next 12 to 18 months. You can see that the microlearning in the middle of the slide, is significantly more. And you can also see other forms of leadership development are significantly more used. So what's important here to realize is that microlearning, again, as a centerpiece, shows an incredible advantage, and that organizations that feel as though they're increasing their readiness level of their leaders, increasing their talent pool of future leaders within their organization, or leaders that can move up quickly into new roles, clearly are driving a micro-learning strategy, and that they can show, again, a good solid business case ROI in the investment in micro-learning and the positive impact it's having on their leadership development program.
Okay, and Michael, can you define action learning for us?
Great question. Action learning is the opportunity to provide a leader a new opportunity to be able to manage a team solving a real-world business problem in which the leader gets to be able to practice their emotional intelligence, competencies, and skills and abilities to lead a team, usually a relatively new team, towards meeting a particular business objective. So the idea in this example is for the leader to move away from a goal-setting, goal-achiever mentality as a leader to being able to be more of a coach and mentor, and be able to develop the self-control, self-regulation, motivational factors, empathy, good communication skills in order to drive the team towards success. So it's not about building a team and having that leader say, follow me, we're going to solve this particular business objective, but to use all of those great skills and competencies that the leaders learn in order to take a relatively new team, work on a project, and be able to show that the team has the potential to solve the problem. So it also employs design thinking as well. The leader's role in action plan is to practice creating the wisdom of crowds, be able to create an inclusive environment within the team, respect for each member of the team and their opinions. So the idea is not to create a role of goal setting and goal achieving, but actually being able to create an environment where innovation, creativity, and the ideas around solving that problem come from the team themselves. And the leader gets to develop their leadership skills in a real world scenario. And then that new leader or new leader to the process has a coach or mentor that's also assigned to them to give them feedback on how they're doing with that team. So that's the basis to action learning.
Thank you.
So just wrapping up here and then being able to pass the baton over to Emily, is microlearning and leadership development. The things you really need to take away from what we've learned is that in order to provide leaders the right environment for developing, you really need to create that personalized learning environment, that contextualization. Every leader learns at a different pace and in a different way. And when you add the conditions for success, what objectives they need to meet, that further creates a more personalized approach. And microlearning offers a very straightforward, very scalable way to create highly personalized learning at scale for leadership development. Also, too, as we talked about before, there's so many different things that we want leaders to know. There's a lot of competing priorities in their brain, and so that they don't forget what they've learned and reinforce it and make sure that they're always in a confident position to be able to apply what they learn. Microlearning helps to reinforce what we originally brought out to their attention that they need to develop, keep it front and center, and keep them feeling confident that they can apply it. And then, as we talked about before, microlearning creates these mini events where they can actually practice their learning. So by giving them scenarios to work on in a microlearning, what would you do in this situation? Or presented with this set of findings or this scenario, what would you do? Or please tell us, in order, the top 5 things that you need to think about when you're looking at this situation. Microlearning provides all of those learning bursts and those self-evaluations and knowledge tests so that a leader can stay really sharp and feel as though they're right on the edge of being able to apply what they learn. So it gives a very safe practice environment that can come long after the initial leadership development courses, instructor-led training, or even flipped classroom practice role modeling that takes place in play, or simple gaming and simulation that's already happened. This keeps it front and center. And so finishing the point on the business case ROI, that organizations that follow these rules and principles, they're twice as likely to have their learning positively affect leadership retention and promotion. And that's incredibly important to stabilize the leadership team and develop them because we're making a big investment in them and we don't want them becoming a great leader for another company.
Okay, so there is also one more question before we pass on to Emily. Have you tested this approach with C-suite levels? And if yes, what is the outcome?
That's a great question. So C-suite executives like to learn this way even more because their limited time, limited ability to sit and go through event-based learning is not something that they want to sign up for, just simply because their level of seniority and the time constraints. So we've worked with organizations where microlearning has been a great tool. It's been added to their strategy where leaders that are traveling, not in one place, highly mobile, have windows of time in order to be able to improve their leadership skills or learn more about how to be a great leader. So microlearning is a perfect scenario, perfect use case for executive leaders that are on the move, on the go, have limited time, and have the time picked really based on their own timetable when they have the ability to absorb. So microlearning is that just in time, just for me, just the way I want it channel for executives and C-suite leaders. And it's just the right amount of content and just the right mix of format that's highly engaging and attractive to them. And so they feel it's of real benefit to them and really makes a big impact. And so it's especially helpful at the highest levels of the organization. So from here, I'll turn it over to our featured speaker, Emily, and she's going to take you through a really great story about the impact that microlearning has had on their leadership development program.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Quentin, as well. So good afternoon, everyone. As Quentin mentioned earlier, my name is Emily Hayden, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about the leadership development activities here at EBSCO and the important role that microlearning continues to play in our professional development efforts with our employees. Now, full disclosure, I do want to share with you, I'm here today to share with you our leadership development activities and to talk to you as a customer of a terrific microlearning product that has really worked beautifully for me in my EBSCO Learning and Development Business Partner role. It's been a tremendous supplement to my offerings as an L&D provider to my organization. This product does, however, happen to be developed and sold by the same company that I work for. So I just wanted to put that out there, full disclosure, but for what it's worth, you know, this, even if this were not a product made by my organization, I would highly endorse it. And I would absolutely buy it if I had to. So I just wanted to be open about that. So if you haven't heard of EBSCO, as Quentin mentioned earlier, EBSCO Industries is one of the largest privately held companies in the United States. We're a very diverse company. We make everything from databases and software for libraries and universities to being a real estate company, and we're the largest manufacturer of fishing lures in the United States. So we have lots of locations, lots of different roles. So developing a leadership development program that was all encompassing for this diverse and international group was a real challenge. My division that I work in is located in Ipswich, Massachusetts, just north of Boston. And my division includes about 3,600 people worldwide who focus on the online information and technology. So the product, well, we do have a learning management system here at EBSCO, which we use extensively. It includes a lot of homegrown content, some vendor supplied content, but really the number one micro learning tool we use for our training efforts, particularly leadership development and soft skills, is a product called Accel5. As Michael mentioned earlier, this tool I'm using all of the time to reinforce the training I'm doing and to reinforce the skills and competencies we're looking for our employees to demonstrate. The name of the product, Accel5, is derived from accelerated learning in 5 minutes or less. Everything all the content in this tool, videos featuring well-known subject matter experts, summaries of key business books, articles from publications like Harvard Business Review, Forbes, HR Magazine, Training Magazine, many, many more. All of these are tools that employees can use just in time. I've got a challenge, or I can send it to them quickly. Hey, you attended an how to interview class last week. Here's another 3-minute video reinforcing what we talked about. Super easy to use, and it's been a tremendous hit for my customers, internal customers. But before we dig in too much to Accel5, let me tell you a little bit about EBSCO's Leadership Development Program. So about 2 years ago, in early 2017, EBSCO launched a new leadership model across the company. We worked with a consulting group called MDA Leadership. They're headquartered in Minneapolis. And MDA helped us to really approach this in a very grassroots way by having employee surveys, employee focus groups. We really knew that we wanted to develop a leadership program that focused on what it means to be a leader at EBSCO. We were very determined to make this applicable, appropriate for our employees, not just Leadership 101 off the shelf. So that took several months. And then at the end of that, we ended up with 12 defined leadership competencies that fell into these 4 what we call areas of focus: personal, people, thought, and results. So the other piece that was very important to us was to emphasize that leadership is everyone's responsibility. Everyone in the organization is a leader in one way, shape, or form. You may be leading a whole division of the business. You may be the leader of an office. You may be someone who doesn't manage others, but you take the lead when working with a customer. You may take the lead in a project. So we took those 12 competencies and created clear behavioral definitions across 4 different roles. Self would be the non-managing person. Leading others, maybe a first-line supervisor or manager. Leading leaders, a director or VP level, and then leading the business. So everyone is asked to demonstrate the competencies, be it collaboration or strategic thinking, but the way that is going to come to light, that the actual behavior may be different based on their role. And that's resonated really well with folks, that it helps them to understand what's expected of them, but also how they can aspire. If I want to get to be a manager, here's the behavior that I'm going to have to be ready to demonstrate. So several different components of the program. Obviously, the model itself, the 12 competencies. When we launched the program 2 years ago, we created a variety of print materials that were disseminated, brochures to tell everybody about the program, posters. We also launched an internal website, leadingebsco.com, that included all of the model information, all of the different behavior definitions, as well as resources to help employee development in these areas. We developed a curriculum map to outline, if I am an employee who needs to do better in a given competency, what are some suggestions for me in developing some training, and as well as a portal specifically linking Accel5 content to our 12 competencies. So I'll quickly talk about each of these. If we go to the next slide. So when we kicked off the program in 2017, we immediately launched a 2-day course for managers, for people who manage others. And this was required of everyone, anyone who managed another person. And this was a great way to kind of begin disseminating the program information. The course includes, obviously, an introduction to the model, and we spent a lot of time talking about what do these competencies look like, people assessing themselves relative to the 12 competencies. Then we took a deeper dive into 3 competency areas: open communication, strategic thinking, and talent development. And we picked those 3 to start with because, frankly, we felt like those were opportunity areas for our company through our engagement surveys with employees, through some of our executive perspective. We definitely felt like those were areas where we should start. So we spend multiple hours on each of those in the 2-day course. The course includes a lot of discussion, exercises. Each participant is also assigned what we call an accountability partner. So this is usually someone they don't know, probably someone from another department, another part of the business, who they meet one-on-one with multiple times over the 2 days, and then are asked or required to meet with after the course is over to hold one another accountable for the things that they're going to apply, the learnings they're going to take with them. So there's personal reflection time, and then we do use content from Accel5, micro-learning videos in particular, several times throughout the 2-day course to reinforce the learning. So here's an example. This is one of the videos from Accel5. Marshall Goldsmith, renowned leadership consultant and author. When we're talking about coaching and talent development and the role managers play in the coaching of employees, I pull up Marshall here and watch his 3-minute video. It's a great way to reinforce the learning, support the key concepts that I've been talking about in the instructor-led training. It breaks up the lecture content, right? So they don't always have to be listening to me. And it also gives participants an insight into this portal. Again, as I mentioned, you can see there in the left-hand corner, the Leading EBSCO. We've worked with the product people to build a portal that's unique for our company and our competencies. And this is something that is included in the cost of the product that they can do for any customers. So if people are looking specifically for our competency, talent development, they're going to find things like Marshall Goldsmith here. So I mentioned that we also make available to employees this curriculum map, and we go through this pretty extensively in the training that we do. It provides traditional 70-20-10 development suggestions for each competency, and you can see within each level, whether it's that leading self, leading others. And this is definitely an iterative document. We continue to add to this all the time. But you can see along that bottom row, there's a lot of Accel5 content that is very applicable to each of our competencies. So we recommend specific micro-learning tools to our employees to give them additional tools for their own personal development. And that's a big part of this, I think, is the self-management part, because these micro-learning tools are so easy to use, so accessible, so quick, that it's something that, you know, we're really, especially with this program, pushing our employees to own their own development, to take responsibility for their learning and their growth. And this gives them the tools to do that. After that 2-day manager training is complete, we do ask them to meet with their manager to reinforce, what did I learn? What were my key takeaways? Again, and continued meetings with their accountability partner. But then we send 10 weekly emails to participants, reinforcing, again, as Michael mentioned earlier, that steady stream of reinforcement of the topics that we covered in class. So this is an example here. There's a video from Accel5 that features Dan Pink, but specifically giving them a video. And again, none of these are more than 3 or 4 minutes long, but it's just ping, ping, ping. Don't forget reinforcement, so that they can refer back to that learning. So Accel5, the first time I really started using it was in that leadership development 2-day manager course. But then I started realizing, wow, this is a great tool to supplement my other instructor-led trainings. So pretty much every class I've got now, I plug in, there's some kind of Accel5 content that I can use to supplement. Whether it's a video that I show in course, or sometimes it's an article or a business summary that I send ahead of time as pre-reading or pre-work for the class, that when we then discuss when folks arrive. So for instance, I teach a conflict resolution class, performance management. Here's a little clip of Peter Bregman. I don't know if you know him, again, best-selling author, who is a frequent contributor to Harvard Business Review and others about management. And he's got a quick little video about how to have difficult conversations, less than 3 minutes. So again, very applicable to the topics that I'm talking about, and just reinforces that learning. And here's another example. This is Linda Bodell. And when I teach interview techniques, I'll share this little 1.5 minute video about questions for hiring innovators. So again, it reinforces my message, breaks up the content a little bit, gives us something more to reflect on as a group, and reinforces the portal and the tool, so that people are like, you know, it's like, don't forget, when you get back to your desk, you can check more of this out. So this is actually a shot of the home screen of our portal that we built with the help of the EBSCO product development folks, again, to feature our content, because that's, you know, these 12 competencies, we wanted to focus content towards that. So if you have a different set of values, corporate values or competencies, they can design this to look any way that you want, which is really wonderful that it's so customized. But I've been talking about how I use this with my training attendees. We've really been trying to push the use of the portal and the tools and the resources to all employees. We have linked this portal within our learning management system. It's on the homepage of our intranet. The other thing is that employees can opt to set up an account for Accel5, and then if they have their own account, they automatically get a weekly push email that tells them about the latest content or the featured content, because our product folks are adding to this all the time. Yeah, that's just another look at how people can browse the system, right? And I'm finding I'm using this a lot now in responding to questions that I get as the learning and development business partner. I get a lot of requests from employees worldwide for their own personal training, which is great. And this is actually a real note I just got last week from Darren in Australia. And he was looking for some tools for time management and workday organization. Now, I would have loved that Darren had known automatically that we have this resource available to him, and I'm guessing he knew that and just momentarily forgot. But I went ahead and reminded him of our Leading EBSCO portal and the content there, and then sent him direct links to some quick things that literally took me, 3 minutes to find. But it's wonderful as a supplier, as a provider to these internal customers, to have great content that's completely applicable to what they're looking for. In fact, his return email to me was, "This is wonderful." So it's always nice to be appreciated, right? So here's just a few statistics. So we've had our portal, leadership development portal, up for about 18 months now, and 21% of our employees have already signed up for that account that I mentioned is optional. And they're using the system quite extensively. You can see that just this is in the last 12 months, we've had 3,000 employees who have viewed over 8,000 items. So they're definitely using it. Now, the videos are definitely most popular, and that probably isn't a surprise to anyone. The thing that's just so wonderful is the quality of those subject matter experts. These are really, as I mentioned, Marshall Goldsmith, Dan Pink, some terrific names that people have also seen on things like TED Talks, but these are much shorter. The book summaries are terrific too. These are business books, and as Michael mentioned, that in particular is a great resource for our senior teams who would love to have all the time in the world to read all the latest business books that are coming out, but now they don't have to. We summarize those books in a few short pages that they can quickly read and get the gist of what does the book entail, and if they're intrigued, then they can go and read the full book. And wonderful articles from key publications too. So, and this is a copy of that newsletter that I mentioned earlier. If employees choose to set up an account, which I always encourage them to do that, they get weekly emails sent to them, a push that includes, featured content. What are some of the latest things added to the database? Always seems to be very timely. So a great reminder as well, reinforcement. And here are some of the comments that I've just had from employees about Accel5 and the use of the tool. Help my team building. One of the things that's nice about this is I find it's so easy for managers to share. and for others to share too. They find something quick and easy. They're like, oh, this is what we were talking about yesterday. Or they get one of those weekly push emails. They're like, oh, I know we're all challenged with time management right now. It's very easy for them to share that and, again, promote that learning within their organization. So I really can't say enough about how effective a tool this has been, a micro-learning tool this has been for me as a learning and development provider within my organization. It's really helped to supplement my training and development offerings tremendously.
Well, thanks, Emily. That was an extraordinary overview, a lot of detail in there and a lot of great things that our audience can take away on the best practices and joining up leadership development with micro-learning. Before we bring it to the key takeaways, Quentin, I wanted to check with you to see if there were any other questions from our audience.
Yes, we do have quite a few questions. If you'd like to take them now, otherwise we could wait until after. It's up to you.
Okay, let's just run through the takeaways quickly and then we'll get through the questions. So just in wrapping up, just reinforcement of some of the points that we made earlier is that leadership development, we need to keep it that lifelong continuous process. We need to understand that leaders are on the move and leaders are spread out all over with a variety of tasks, and we have to be able to have them learn new and different things and have that integrate into their day-to-day work schedule. We also know that we have to be able to use micro-learning in order to create a more effective and also efficient leadership development program. This high impact approach of being able to deliver exceptionally good, highly relevant content, just in time, moment of need, easily consumable for the leader where they can apply it very quickly. It's got a high degree of relevancy to it, is really the cornerstone for having a great program. So I'll turn it back over to you, Quentin, so that we can try to get through as many questions we have with the time that we have left.
Okay, so Emily, I think this would be a question for you maybe. Is your micro-learning created specifically for your company, or do you pull from externally available materials in regards to videos, articles, etc.?
It's not specifically created for me. No, it's the videos are created by this. I mean, again, pretend like we're separate companies, but EBSCO product development people, they do create these videos. They pull in content like, as I mentioned, articles. They hire people to write these book summaries, but the actual content of the product is not for me and my organization. It just happens to be great stuff that very much applies to what my users need. Hope that answers the question.
Okay, and here's another one. So what evidence would there be that the weekly JIT resources get used, and not lost in the sea of emails, communications that leaders get?
That's a great question. There is. I have been given access to an administrative site so that I can see what my users are doing relative to the content. And so, like that 8,000 views was, from my own little being able to pull at those, that data. And to me, again, that tells me that people are looking at this. But right, I mean, it's a valid question that the weekly emails, certainly for people who created accounts, right? We all get a lot of emails, but I feel like the reinforcement of the tool And the value of those resources happens like in the classroom. You know, people have seen, wow, this is good stuff when we talk about that. And so when they get those videos, they know that it's valuable. And again, the topics are just so timely. I mean, you know, we all struggle with things like time management, as you know. So I feel like the product people who are developing those weekly push emails are thinking about, you know, what's relevant.
All right. And then I guess anyone can jump in on this one. Does microlearning work best as a supplement or follow on to classroom training? Or do you think it can stand on its own as a learning experience?
Well, I'll jump in here first, Michael, and then maybe you can. I think, again, it can stand on its own as just-in-time learning. It can be very helpful, but it is quick. You know, a lot of the things that we have are like, you know, 3 quick ideas for addressing difficult conversations. I think, to me, it would be maybe and then an introduction to some additional learning. Maybe it's going to be exactly what the person is looking for if they're fairly senior, for instance. It's just might be you know, okay, here's some new concepts but I think it might trigger an interest in further training or research. I don't know, Michael, what do you think?
You know, I think under the circumstances of the individual learner, I think microlearning can be a replacement for a lot of the current forms of learning. Because if you think about its proximity to the learner, it's incredibly relevant, high touch, getting to them in the moment that they need it, and its reinforcement properties, I think it's a very effective tool because for many of the scenarios we talked about, leaders just don't have the time and the energy and the availability to be able to sit and go through big online courses or be able to sit through a lot of instructor-led training, go to a seminar. This is all time
Right.
competition. So I think one of the things that you could do in order to kind of meet in the middle is microlearning can also be developed in the purposes for sessions. So microlearning doesn't have to be just a 1-minute video, but microlearning can also be micro sessions where you can link several stages of microlearning together to drive a particular set of objectives in what we call micro sessions. So, you know, you could have a video, some instructional video to work, maybe some self-assessment that they can work through in their own time, and that completes a session. And they can also reach out and have availability of a coach or a mentor or a subject matter expert that you might have identified that they can talk to or a peer. And that can be a micro session. So I think in the new world order of leadership development, we have to focus on the fact that accessibility and relevancy is really what's going to drive whether or not leaders develop. And the fact that if we want them in one place for a long period of time, then when we have those meaningful times, even if we get all of the learning across, with all of their competing priorities, that learning is going to be forgotten, you know, or their ability to apply is going to be difficult and challenging from the time that they first learned it. And in this approach, they can immediately apply what they learned and it's reinforced. So I think it could be a very effective replacement. We've seen many organizations significantly reducing their footprint in instructor-led training in online courses and going more with this micro-learning, blended learning approach.
Okay. Emily, here's another one for you about Accel5. Are there tools within Accel5 to design your own push emails, or are they all pre-designed?
That's a good question. Well, you can always design your own push emails outside of the tool, you know, so if you know, again, just grabbing the content, that's what we did with the follow-ups for the leadership training. The the weekly emails today, I'm pretty sure, come from the product development people and are all the same to anyone, anyone who's bought the product and has signed up for accounts. So I think those are prescribed. You'd have to kind of cultivate content yourself to create customized emails.
All right. Another question for anyone who wants to jump in on this one. Based on how busy we all are, leaders and individuals, do you see microlearning as an actual wave of the future?
I absolutely do. Again, for all the reasons Michael just said, that people just are so busy and don't have time and are looking for a quick shot in the arm of, I've got this challenge. What's a suggestion?
All right, there's a few more questions in here. Do you have another LMS outside of Accel5? How do you create an integrated learning experience with many different platforms?
Right, that's the Accel5 can be integrated into your learning management system, so that people can have it all in one if you want to do that. So that is ideal for, again, just keeping everything in one place and allowing people to search all the options available to them. And the EBSCO products and support people can help you with that.
Okay, let's maybe do a couple more questions here. A lot of these people seem like they're very interested in Accel5 here. So who summarizes the books, and do you have a standard format for what they look like to share?
Well, we really need the product people here. I think, because I'm not 100% sure, again, I'm more of an internal customer, but I'm pretty sure that some of those summaries are outsourced. I think they have a team of writers they work with regularly who are reading these business books and summarizing them. Some of them may also be EBSCO employees, but yes, I'm pretty sure there is a fairly standard template that includes what are the key themes of the book. They also note, like, how long would it take an average person if you decided to read the full book? It would take you 6 hours, 30 minutes. But it's a huge time saver. And again, you may read the summary and say, this is really great. I really want to read this whole book, but I didn't have to get halfway through the book to find out this wasn't worth my time. So it's a terrific way to get the key points.
Okay, so it does look like there's not too many more questions coming in. So for the last couple minutes, I first want to say thank you to Emily and Michael for providing your insights. Is there anything else in these last few minutes here that you guys wanted to leave off with?
I would just say if people really are interested in Accel5, you can Google Accel5 or EBSCO.com for more information about that specific product. And again, I'm not in the sales department, but it has been a tremendously useful tool for me as an L&D provider.
Okay, great. Well, if you do have any more questions from the audience, you feel free to email us at success@brandonhall.com, and we'll be sure to follow up with you offline. So again, thank you, everybody, and thank you for joining this webinar, and we do hope to see you on the next one.